Hi, I'm Ardy Sarraf from the Fab Four, and you're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com right here, right now.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm Jon Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for people, adults, mostly over 50, who want to learn to play bass because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Let's play bass. I've got a special guest this week. Ardy Ardavan is the bass player with the Fab Four, which is an absolutely amazing Beatles tribute band. Ardavan is your full name. Ardy is what you go by. Welcome, Ardy. It's so great to have you for BassPlayersOnly.com. Welcome.
Great to be here, man. Great to be here with you, John.
Your story is absolutely mind blowing, and I have a lot of questions.
Well, that's good. That's what I'm here for.
All right. Well, first of all, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
Los Angeles.
Okay.
Born
And
and raised, still live out in this area, about a half an hour away from downtown.
okay. And but most people migrate to Los Angeles. Not too many people are actually from there that I know in my circles, but
I keep going east. I keep going east, closer to the other airports, away from LAX. So, yeah,
I don't blame you. I used
yeah.
to fly into John Wayne Airport, but that doesn't seem to be as easy as it used to be. If I'd go to the NAM show or somewhere down in
Oh, yeah.
Orange County.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell me about your initial exposure to music. I know your mom had a cool record collection, so you heard a lot of that stuff. But how were you first introduced to music as a youngster?
Well, my mom was a kind of a gospel singer in church, right? And she used to sing around at different churches with some friends of hers that she grew up with in high school. So they were a little quartet, and they had a musical arranger guy doing piano stuff and writing the charts for them. And I would go with my mom once in a while to the rehearsals. They had a musical arranger, and I would go with them to rehearsals. I would obviously see her at church as well. And she had a bunch of Everly Brothers records that I would look through at home, and all sorts of Elvis stuff. She had a couple Beatle albums, and then when John Lennon was killed, my older sister put together a photo album, a memorial photo album, and I kind of that was my world of Beatles. I didn't know why everybody was so upset that this guy was gone, and I started getting to the music, and I quickly learned why he was so loved. That's really my initial taste into music and getting music around me all day, every day.
How did you become a bass player?
Um, that was kind of by default, actually. I think.
A lot of people have that story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of more of a rhythm player, a rhythm guitar player. I've never been much of a lead player. I could play my own stuff, and I could by ear, I could learn stuff by ear and all that stuff from records. But um, I think because I became a Beatle fan, I wanted to do something like Paul because I kind of had a natural range vocally early on. I realized it, and other people did too. So they said, "Well, why don't you play bass too?" So I guess I started playing bass. I used to borrow a friend's bass guitar, and then I finally bought my own Pro. It was an Area Pro 2,
Yep.
all black, beautiful bass. I still have it. I bought it in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard next to Guitar Center, and the rest they say is history.
So you went to a Beatles convention sometime in the 90s, I guess, right? Where you
Late 80s.
late 80s, okay. And that's where you met one or more of the guys that you're in this band with, right?
Yeah, they had it was called Beatle Fest back then. And what you would do is you would sign up to play Battle of the Bands, right?
Oh,
Saturday and Sundays, they had maybe 7 or 8 bands play. And the audience was the judge. They would put your hand over the band and the audience would say who won. And so my band was called Glass Onion at the time. And we didn't dress up like the Beatles. I was playing right handed. I borrowed a friend's Rickenbacker bass we played all the cool stuff though. We played all the like mid '60s Revolver stuff and some Pepper stuff and all the stuff that these other bands weren't playing. So in turn, I learned that a lot of these professional Beatle guys that are in Beatle bands, they were looking to see if I wanted to join them on a show. And I got a call one day to say, "Hey, would you like to go to Japan?" And I was, I think, 20 years old at the time. I said, "Yeah, I'll go." you know. So it's funny because I never thought I wanted to ever do that. I never saw myself pretending to be a Beatle. In fact, I was one of the biggest critics of it. I didn't really understand it until you start doing it and you realize what effect it has on people. Some people that actually saw the Beatles and people that never got a chance to see the Beatles, which is most people. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what happened. And then we formed the Fab Four. I
Let me ask
decided.
you, when you went to this convention, this Beatle Fest, so I didn't realize you were performing there or you were competing in this Battle of the Bands. But other than that, was it just for fun and just to do the Battle of the Bands? Did you have a goal in mind? Like, hey, I want to meet some guys and put together a Beatles tribute band? That just happened?
Just for the love of the music, just purely for the love of the music, and that just you're in the center of these Beatle fans weekend basically, and you just start meeting people. And that's basically what happened.
Was it obvious that you were going to be Paul, or how did that come about?
Well, to me it was because I grew up after my initial experience with my mom and my sister and Beatles stuff. Um, I had started listening to Kiss. So I'm going to segue real quick to Kiss. Kiss was my Beatles before the Beatles. So I was huge into Kiss so I gravitated towards Paul Stanley's voice, just the rock and roll kind of thing. And Queen had come out around that time as well. Obviously, my first Queen record was News of the World, and then the Beatles. So for me, it was a weird progression, but I had obtained, I don't know who got it for me, but an 8-track of the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl, right? The live concert. And I used to play that thing until it was almost completely done. I mean, I would listen to that thing. This is the late or early 80s. And, while other kids are listening to whatever they're listening to, Van Halen or whatever, which I love, but I was listening to the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl on 8-track. And just songs like Twist and Shout, like hearing John Lennon scream that, and especially Long Tall Sally, the way they ended it, and McCartney's vocals on that thing. I mean, I was just, it would give chills on my spine from it, and I just have naturally, I kind of had that tonality, the timbre, however you pronounce it, in my voice, and I recognized that when I was young, and other people did too, and luckily, I've been able to use that and refine it and make it better over the years, and I could sing like Freddie Mercury at times too, and Robert Plant. I noticed early on I was a kind of a rock and roll singer. Stuff like Foreigner, Hot Blooded, I was able to do that stuff. So yeah, I just kind of realized I was kind of a rock and roll singer kind of guy.
Okay, now that we're warmed up, let me throw this at you. You are right-handed.
I am.
You've taught yourself or figured out how to play lefty bass?
Yeah.
That is
So
quite a commitment. That's mind blowing to me. How did you do
well,
that?
Well, I think a year or so into the Fab Four, once I hooked up with these other guys after Beatle Fest, we said, "Look, let's form a band, call it the Fab Four. It'll be the ultimate tribute." And I said, "Okay, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm not going to be up there playing right-handed. I'm going to teach myself how to play left-handed." So I bought a lefty Hofner, which is over there. That's not the first one. This is the newest one, but my original one is over there with my other guitars, and I just one at a time, boom, boom, boom. It was Love Me Do. You start with the one album, boom, 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 but one at a time, one after another, until you gradually progress to Day Tripper, where there's slides and stuff. And I've always used a pick, luckily, because for the most part, Paul played with a pick usually, so I already had that in my repertoire a little bit, and the funny thing is, I had to relearn how to use a pick. Obviously, you picking like this right-handed, playing a right-handed bass guitar, but then when you go left-handed, it's like I kept missing every string under the E. So I would pluck out like this, missing the other strings. I'd go, okay, well, that's not good. So I had to adjust the way I stand, when you're playing right-handed or when you play any guitar, you usually, if you're on stage standing up, you're resting your guitar generally on your right leg, right? Generally. And so I realized that playing I'm sorry, is it the left side?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
right.
left side. Yeah. And so I'd have to do it the opposite way when I learned how to play left-handed. So it took a while. It took a few months to really get it under my belt until I was able to progress to stuff like, Lovely Rita and sing it at the same time. Stuff like getting better with slides and doing that. And so it just became, you just have to hit it really hard and make sure that you're playing and practicing stuff every day. That was my main thing. I had to practice every day to get it where it was second nature. And after 20 some years, it's for the most part second nature, for the most part.
That's funny. I was at this Warwick base camp in Germany a few years ago. Victor Wooten was there, and he was
Oh,
watching me play something, and he says, "Do you mind if I make a few observations?" I said, "No, I don't mind." But I was really trying to learn the two-handed tapping. And what you reminded me of something he said to me, because I'm thinking, my God, your left hand technique now has to become your right hand technique. But what he said to me was, anything the left hand can do, the right hand can do, which made a lot of sense in that context. But I'm thinking of you, I'm sure you already had the technique down, so you didn't really have to relearn it. You just had to relearn how to do it
it's
backwards.
one of these things. It's one of these things. So every time, like, for instance, a quick story or a quick example is if I'm on the road playing left-handed for a few shows, let's say 4 or 5 shows in the week, and I'll come home and I want to just pick up a righty bass or righty guitar. My hands cramp up a little bit because the muscle memory. It's like muscle memory on the hands too. So it
It's
takes a
got to
few
be great
minutes.
for your mind also to
I hope. I hope. you know.
did it ever cross your mind to take your righty bass and like Jimmy Haslip, turn it upside down where the E string is down and
No,
no.
I couldn't do that. Some of the guys, most of the guys in the Fab Four, let's say, for instance, I have to go over once in a while and play Lady Madonna. We don't do that all the time, but we do that song quite a bit. Hey Jude, we do almost every show. So the John guy, rather than having a righty bass in the gear as an extra guitar on the road, they swing my lefty this way. So they do play it upside down. So they're playing, the Lady Madonna lick upside down. So to me, that's harder in my head than actually playing it left-handed because you're thinking twice about where everything is. And so they play Hey Jude or Lady Madonna with my left-handed Hofner upside down, and to me that's harder. I mean, I guess you'd be able to do it after a few practices, but it's just wacky. That's just wacky to me.
A few or maybe quite a few.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
it seems to me I read somewhere about Mono Neon that he's a righty, but he's liked the sound of the lefty better or something, so he switched over, which I don't really get. But you know who I'm talking about?
I think I've heard the name. I'm not familiar with the story though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's just very bizarre. Hey, the Fab Four. Did you have any trouble getting that name? Because people always refer to the Beatles as the Fab Four, and I'm sure you know who Will Lee is. I'm sure he's on your radar with the Fab Four. But
Yeah.
did you have any trouble getting the name, the Fab Four? Because that's awesome that you got it.
No, the only thing was the font. The font that we had originally was too close to the Beatle font, so we changed it into it's a Hard Day's Night kind of a font, the Fab Four. So no, we didn't have any problems. It's registered, and the Beatles know about us. We've done some Beatle projects. We've um, in the mid 2000s, we did the first thing we did was a Rock Band game. So they hired us to do the motion capture suits to go to New York. We filmed for 3 days. We did all the motion capture for the Rock Band game. So for us, that was huge. And then that led to a couple years later to a Yellow Submarine remake by Robert Zemeckis with his new studio under Disney. And unfortunately, after we did all the motion capture stuff, all the footage, they canned the movie because of a couple previous movies, which were Mars Needs Moms and the Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey, the digital stuff, the CGI stuff. They lost so much money that Disney said, no, we're not going to go ahead and do the Yellow Submarine thing. And for us, it was like, that was devastating because that would have been a huge feather in our cap. I mean, and we were already talking with the people about, oh, which premiere would you like to go to, the English premiere or the American premiere? And we're so close to having that thing completed. But things like that, luckily here in Los Angeles, we've been able to do that kind of stuff and have some notoriety. Not just because we're here in LA, because there's lots of Beatle bands out here. It's because of our reputation. And I'll give myself and the other guys a pat on the back because the Bible for us is the record. The record is the Bible. We don't stray from it. We try to do it. I mean, as note for note as we can, and we do it all as a four-piece. We don't have another guy on stage with us. There's no tapes that are going on or any backing tracks. Everything's sung by the four of us. Everything's played by the four of us. In fact, right now we're actually doing the Rubber Soul album live, the complete Rubber Soul album, the British LP, and so that's a new show that we've thrown on the road, and we're kind of seeing how the audience is grabbing it because it's an unusual album for sure. It's not full of a bunch of hits, so we're having a lot of fun with it, and I think. The Fab Four have had their name. There's maybe two or three other Beatle bands in the world that have a reputation as good as we do, luckily. And we're proud of that. We're very proud of that.
Well, you mentioned that the live thing, just the four of you, that seems to be a point of pride with you, deservedly so. Because I've seen the Fab Four a few times, and I know Will pretty well. He wrote the foreword to one of my books. He endorsed one or two of my other books, and they have horns and they have strings and they have all kinds of stuff. And I don't know if they have any backing tracks or anything sequenced or not. Probably not with all those people. But was there a reason that was so important to you to just have everything live and not recorded?
I think just out of pride. Honestly, I think it was just because we could do it, so we were able to do it. I think one of the first ones way back when was, okay, one of the guys plays piano. Okay, then you learn the street. Get a keyboard that has the sounds for Penny Lane, and we can do it. That kind of a thing. Just, okay, we can do it. Let's do it. So, yeah.
Do you do Eleanor Rigby?
We do Eleanor Rigby. One guy plays the keyboard.
Okay. Oh, awesome. I hope to see you. When are you coming to Michigan?
Oh, we were just there, actually. We were just there about a month and a half ago at what's it called? The hall, the Detroit Music Hall.
Oh, music. I just saw America there like a month or so.
Yeah, and I saw the promotion for it when we were there. So that was just after us, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a great place. I saw Buddy Rich there. I saw Maynard Ferguson there. I saw Cleo Lane there. I saw Oscar Peterson there. Yeah, that's a great place.
Who are your influences? Who did you grow up listening to?
Well, I grew up. My dad was a rock and roll DJ in the 50s and 60s, so I knew every song on the radio. So before moving to Detroit, we lived in Cleveland. So just whatever was on the radio, and then moving to Detroit and all the Motown stuff. But the Beatles, actually, I saw the Beatles. I was 6 years old, and we still lived in Cleveland. And I always say, I don't know if I was the only 6-year-old there, but I was definitely the hippest. Because you know what?
Wow.
I knew where I was. I knew who they were. I knew the songs. And it was at Municipal Stadium where the Browns used to play and the Indians used to
Oh yeah.
play. And some of it was a little scary. I remember through my innocent 6-year-old view of the world thinking that, boy, it's a good thing all those policemen just happened to be here.
That's cool. Not many people could say that they saw them. Not very many people at all.
I think the first concert we all went to as a family was the Dave Clark Five, and then we saw
Wow.
the Love and Spoonful and the Association.
What a great lineup.
Yeah, yeah, those were great. But whatever was on the radio, the Supremes and Stevie Wonder, and then as I got older, and then into the '70s, it was Aerosmith and ELP and Led Zeppelin, and all the usual
Oh
suspects.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
for sure.
introduced me to Stanley Clark, and then I got into the whole Chick Corea, and then I was nuts for Al Di Meola. I was a guitar player before I was a bass player, as most bass players can say. I feel like I got
Yeah.
a sneeze coming on. That's why I'm kind of jerking around like that. But let me ask you about. I think Paul McCartney is just magical. I think he has such an uncanny ability to know exactly what a song needs. And he just became the bass player because the other guy died and they needed a bass
Yeah.
player. But, he does plenty of stuff on guitar and keyboard and he sings. So, what are some of your favorite Paul McCartney bass lines? And I'm sure you get asked this question all the time.
Boy, well, all my loving's fun. That's an easy one to. That was a tricky one when I was a kid trying to learn that one and sing at the same time.
That's a walking
Um,
mic.
yeah, yeah, that's a great tune. Nice and they got that Hofner, that low end from the Hofner, real nice and warm. It's very light. One of my favorite bass lines I think I mentioned earlier was "Lovely Rita" off the Pepper album, and at first I thought I didn't think I was going to be able to do it because that's such a crazy bass line. And each verse, he doesn't do the same thing twice. Almost never. It's never the same thing twice. So Lovely Rita's fun. Something is huge. People love that bass. That's a great bass line. Funny because I heard that George Harrison, who obviously wrote something, thought it was too busy of a bass line. But I can't imagine that song with any other bass line. I just can't. I couldn't imagine it. So I think you're right. I think Paul knew because he's a craftsman and songwriter first, and I think he just intuitively knew how to move the song along. How to change it up. And on that song is exactly what I just said. Each verse is completely different. He's playing completely different every single time. Nothing's the same at all. So very innovative. Innovative. What's another one? Let's see. Do I have another one I can think of? Let me see. Little Help from My Friends.
I
That's a
love
lot of fun.
the tone on that song. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great song. I played on, a Rickenbacker and bass like that one. Yeah, I think, and he still does great stuff. I mean, Paul has all that Wing stuff in the '70s. Oh my gosh. Good Night Tonight. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Good Night
sure
Tonight's a
am.
great bass
Yeah.
line.
Very
Silly Love
trebly.
Song. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That's the Yamaha. That was the Good Night Tonight bass from the last Wings record. But yeah, great stuff. There's so many great bass lines.
You ever play Tell Me Why?
Oh yeah,
It's another
yep,
walking.
yep. Another one. That was a thinker too, because you're thinking. I mean, luckily for that song, he seemed to be playing consistently each verse. It sounded like they were doing the same thing. Luckily, but it's funny. I'll just throw this in, because we're learning. We're doing the Rubber Soul album shows right now, so we all go back and relearn everything. And if you get a chance, go on YouTube, type in "I'm Looking Through You," isolated tracks. Listen to the bass line on that. It's not until I heard it isolated like that. I used to play it very simplistic, a little bit less moving around, but because I never heard it like this. So with the technology today, which is another benefit to all of us bands, everybody, you can pick apart and really key in on the bass the guitar stuff, some of the harmonies that are buried. But I'm looking through you. It's crazy how much moving around he's done. I never heard it before. So that's another crazy one.
Yeah, those are all great. My favorite has always been I Saw Her Standing There.
Oh yeah, that's a
And
great song. Yeah, fun to play, and that was a hard one. That was very similar to like I was talking about missing all the strings when I was learning how to play. I would miss when I was first trying to learn it left-handed. I would miss all these other strings, so it would just mute. My fingers would mute the string that because my head wasn't connected with what my fingers were doing or trying to do. So that was an issue. That was a tough one for a while.
when you pick up a bass, you just naturally pick it up lefty. Can you play the bass righty? Because I know you play guitar
Yeah,
righty, but you play
yeah.
bass lefty. So
Most of my guitars here are right-handed, believe it or not. I have a whole wall over there. Basically, I'm sitting in the middle of a mini guitar center. Uh, I got about 35 guitars on racks here, up on the wall over there. Um, yeah, most of the guitars here are right-handed, actually.
now in the Fab Four, just nailing the music is a big project in itself. But the gestures, the accents, the visuals, the bowing, all the theatrical elements. By the way, I said accents. I love the way I think you exaggerated a little bit on "Till There Was You" when he says, "I
Uh,
never saw them."
yeah,
Saw them winging.
yeah, yeah.
So that's got to be a whole other mindset, and then the costumes and the especially the during the magical mystery tour stuff and the those crazy outfits had hello goodbye and all of those. So is that like a whole other? Do you have somebody else that works with you, or is it just the four of you? I mean, is there a team? Is there a company, or how do you do
Oh,
all that stuff?
well, as far as we all do makeup. Obviously, I don't look anything like Paul like this, but with makeup, we do the wigs, which I know Will doesn't like. Sorry, Will, he doesn't like the wig dance, but I think he made an exception with us. But because we're doing that stuff to represent the Beatles, and we're trying to give the illusion for 2 hours, and so we do makeup ourselves. We all do our own wigs and cutting of the wigs and styling. Some of the clothes were bought commercially. There was a place called BeatlesSuits.com, and and it was really cool because the guy Russ Leese is his name, and Russ Leese actually goes all the way back to Drum City, a very popular drum place, and he up until about 5 years ago owned the original Beatles Ed Sullivan drum head. So he sold that about 5 years ago, and he stopped doing his BeatleSuits.com stuff. And what he was doing with the BeatleSuits.com stuff was making the black Ed Sullivan jackets with the little velvet collars. Also made the Shea Stadium jackets, the beige kind of army beige looking jackets. There was a couple other places that were doing that, but generally they're not around anymore. You can't get that stuff commercially. So you piece stuff together, including the white shirts with the long collars. It's very difficult to find 60s looking long collar t-shirt shirts, full dress shirts. The boots, we got them from a place called Beatwear Cavern in England. So the Sergeant Pepper suits are all custom made. Everything else we kind of put together, but we all do it ourselves. Really, for the most part, I'd say 85% individual work that we do and bring it together and bring it into the Fab Four.
So did you stand in front of a mirror for hours and watching Paul, then watch yourself? And I'm just trying to imagine how you would go through all that.
As a kid, I would do that with that Hollywood Bowl video, 8-track that I mentioned. I actually used to draw the Beatles on a piece of paper, cut them out, put them on the table, and have a flashlight. And while I'm listening to the Hollywood Bowl, and pretend I was a spotlight operator and go into each Beatle. And so gave us the idea. Well, we better start, filming ourselves as we're starting the Fab Four thing. and we would record every show for about 5, 6 months until we would sit together and we would pick it apart and we would bust each other up about, oh, you're doing that wrong, or your leg is not there,
I
all
was
that stuff,
wondering about that.
everything. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, it's very important, and because we're such fans too, we want to just get it out as perfect as possible, as close as we can do it, visually, musically. That was our goal, and for the most part, we succeeded. I really do think we did that.
Absolutely. But when you play A Hard Day's Night and the early stuff versus the Let It Be stuff, the stuff, the look changes. The wig has got
Yeah,
to be different, and there's facial hair, and there's beards, and so do you account for all that as well?
we do when we can. The beer thing, we've only done a couple times because of the quick changeover.
Yeah.
We don't have that much time to do that, but we have done that. We have done the beard thing, but again, that's very, very, very rare. For the most part, we do in our typical Fab Four show. Let's call it. We call it the flagship show, which is it's mainly the hits. It's mainly the one album, and it's a 2 hour show, and we do about four costume changes.
It's a full-time job, full-time commitment.
It is.
Let's talk about playing bass. This is for bassplayers.only.com, which is really a bass instruction site. I've got people from pretty much all 50 states now and some 50, 60 countries around the world coming to For Bass Players Only every day. People who are signed up to learn bass through my membership and my digital courses. Most
That's
of
great.
most of the people I attract tend to be men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I had someone sign up the other day who was 83 years old. So they're not
Wow.
career bound, but they've always wanted to do this. Maybe they're retired now and they want to play some classic rock riffs with their buddies or some blues shuffles or maybe a little walking bass or some funk R&B.
Sure.
Sometimes they have arthritis and tendonitis or recovering from surgery. And I hope I'm not going too far painting this picture. I'm just trying to give you some context because I want to ask you what advice you could impart to somebody like that who wants to learn how to play bass. What do you think they should be thinking about?
Oh, well, I think it goes for everybody that has the desire to play. And I think we all play because we love music. That's the first thing. So you got to love music. It doesn't matter what kind of music, doesn't matter the genre. I think if you play as much as you can, if you can't play every day, play for an hour when you can and just enjoy what you're playing. Don't pick apart what you're playing too much. Nobody's perfect. Everybody plays differently. You could read music. You could not read music. You could learn by ear. I think there's so many different ways that anybody could buy a nice affordable bass that's well put together that can last for 20 years, and not break the bank, not cost $2,000, to pick up. And I think just the joy of sitting around and picking up a guitar and playing a little bass, one of your favorite songs, I think that's a great thing. I think as long as you play, if you have a guitar and you start playing, don't stop. Play every day if you can. If not, play at least 3 or 4 hours a week if you can. Just sit around, watch TV. That's what I do a lot. Watch TV. Have a bite of food, go back and play more. Have a drink, go back and play. I think just the joy of playing. Just play when you can.
That's great. A lot of them are telling me they want to learn more about music theory. They want to learn how to learn songs. They want to be able to navigate the bass fingerboard up and down without feeling totally lost. I have a new digital course coming out week after next, which is going to incorporate those three things primarily. But can you speak to any or all of those things?
Well, for me, I'm mainly I'm mainly ear taught completely, almost completely. Although I took one bass class, a bass player, and to be honest with you, for me, it wasn't the right thing because I didn't want to play in, let's say, a band reading music. I didn't want to be. To me, it was limiting because I wanted to sing and play. So for me, it wasn't that I wasn't that kind of a musician. Although I wish I had, just because the knowledge of it, I think is very important. Um, Mixolydian and all that stuff to me. After a while, I just got whoa. I just want to play that song. What do I do? So for me, it was a different thing. I preferred to play by ear, but a lot of my friends are went to different music schools, and they're much better off for it because it brought them into a whole broader world of music. It really not just bass. It really can spread into other instruments that some of that theory applies. Obviously, not necessarily techniques, obviously, but um, I think if anyone wants to learn all that stuff, I think it's you better strap in. It's not easy. That stuff's not easy. Strap in, but the same thing. You got to practice, and then it becomes muscle memory. You know.
Thank you for that. What about the future for you and for the Fab Four? Or is there anything else that, I mean, you've pretty much nailed this thing. So is there anything that you haven't done yet that you still want to do?
Uh, let's see. Well, I want to meet Ringo. I met Paul before, but I haven't met Ringo yet. In fact, I just took my son, my little 5-year-old son, to see Ringo about 4 nights ago, about 10 minutes away from where we are here, because I wanted him to see a Beatle. And he's a little guitar player and piano player and drums. I'm sitting at a drum kit right now, actually a V drum kit. He loves sitting here, so I wanted to take him to see Ringo. So that's on a personal level. With the Fab Four, we just keep doing what we're doing. We have another batch of younger guys because it's a young man's game. Touring for 25 years plus, it's taken a toll on some of us that have been doing it. I'm one of the original guys with the band, and dealing with stuff like sciatic. I never had that in my life. And last year, uh, from April till about October, I had it every day. And so that was an eye-opening thing. And I had already started looking at coming off the road and being behind the scenes more, and still doing stuff with and for the Fab Four, but not necessarily being on the shows, because we have a lot of young kids that are coming up, 20-something-year-olds that are great musicians, better than me, sing well, all that, look good, taller, all that stuff. So we have a new generation of Fab Four guys that are already in the mix. We've been using them for years. And every couple of years, there's another guy comes into the fold. So we're very lucky because our name attracts a lot of those guys. Some guys that come up and think, oh, I want to play in a Beatle band. Who do I look to? Well, there's a couple other bands, and then there's Fab Four too. So luckily, that reputation after all these years is still held in pretty high regard. So I think the Fab Four is going to be going on for years and years, actually.
Well, that's great. I sure hope so. And so does everybody watching, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, it's a great show. It really is. If you're a Beatle fan, I mean, I would suggest. I mean, the guys in Fab Four with Will, those guys are great too, and they do it a different take. They don't dress up; they do the music, and that's great. And they have the cool visuals and all that. And I love those guys. Every time I got a chance to see them, I would see them. Obviously, out here in LA, they never come out here, so I don't get a chance to see them. But it's as long as the Beatles music is around, which I think it'll be around forever. Luckily for all of us, I think there'll be a fan base. And on the sad part of it, when Ringo and Paul are gone, oh gosh, that's gonna be pretty devastating, to a lot of us that are such Beatle fans. And I think that's gonna create a whole new wave of interest in the Beatles because they're not going to be here anymore. And it's a sad thing to think about. And I don't even care about the Fab Four stuff like that, but it's just a sad thing to realize that there's only two guys left. You got Paul and Ringo, and they're not going to be around here forever. And so we just want to pay tribute to them now and as long as we can, in the most respectful and loving way we can.
Thank goodness we have all those recordings and all those movies and videos and everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ringo is touring. He's going to be not too far from me, I think, in a few weeks. Who's in his band? Hamish Stewart is playing bass, isn't he?
Hamish is playing bass and some guitar stuff. He's doing some average white band stuff. He's got Steve Lukather, Toto. He's got Edgar Winter.
Oh, that's right.
He's got Greg Bissonette.
I was going to ask you if Greg was playing. He's a Detroit boy.
Yeah, Greg's there. Let's see who else is in the band. Colin Ray from Men at Work.
Oh, okay.
It's a good band. A lot of good tunes. It was a fun night, and I'm glad we got to go out and do that. You know.
Do you know Greg's brother, Matt Bissonette?
I don't know. I haven't even met Greg yet. A couple of our guys know Greg pretty well, actually. One of our drummers knows Greg fairly well.
I met Matt when in 1980 I was at a summer jazz program at a community college, and he was one of the other kids there in that group. And then his brother came in, his older brother Greg, because he was going to be one to watch, and he was a big band or something like that. Everybody says, "Wow, he's a great drummer. He's going places." So that was 1980.
That guy, I mean, he hasn't missed a beat. Literally has not missed a beat. You know. Yeah, exactly. But Ringo always has a great band. He always has a great lineup with him.
Well, I think he could probably get pretty much anyone he wants.
Yeah.
Does he? What's the balance between playing the drums and the versus being in the front and singing? How much does Greg get to play?
I think Greg's playing on everything. They're kind of doing a tandem thing. When Ringo's back there, Ringo only played and sang on the drums maybe 2 or 3 times. The rest of the time, he was backing the other guys with their songs on drums with Greg. Or he was out front, like on Yellow Submarine. He comes out, and with a little help from my friends, he comes out, obviously. And Greg's back there, you know, keeping the bass, the drums going. So it's a good mix. It's a good mix of seeing Ringo play the drum. I mean, for me, it was nostalgic seeing him so close, and you know, he's singing "I Want to Be Your Man" and on the drums, and he's still magical. You know, 83 years young. I can't believe that guy's 83 years. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, and when I was 6 and we saw him in that concert, I was telling you about my sister, who's 2 years older than I am. She goes, "Ringo, Ringo, Ringo."
Most popular one back then.
Yeah, well, Paul is still my favorite, though.
Yeah, and Paul's still doing great too. I wish, you know, it's probably too late now, but I think 10, 15 years ago they should have teamed up. Paul with his band, Ringo with his band, and at the end they all joined together. That would have been an amazing tour. It's just too bad they never did that.
Not too late, is it?
I don't know. It might be. Might be,
yeah.
Yeah.
What would you be if you were not a bass player or a guitar player? I mean, something outside of music. Did you go to school for something? Did you study something? Did you?
I studied art. I was an artist. I studied a whole bunch of different ceramics, paint. I started getting into a little bit of digital stuff, but it was beyond me at the time. So, but I still like doodling. I still like drawing when I get a chance, which is few and far between. I think had I not been into artwork or the digital side of it, I probably would have gotten into some computer artwork or some computer generated images. I would have loved to do that. Excuse me. Stuff for movies and TV. I think that would have been right up my ballpark.
Yeah. It worked pretty good. George Lucas, he's probably right up the road from you.
Yeah, not too far. 7 hours, I think.
Well, hey. Well, thank you so much, Ardy. This has been great. I kept you longer than I had intended, but I told you at the beginning I had a lot of questions. So this is.
Hey, man. I appreciate it, man. You know, if I can just throw a plug in, that people can find our website, thefab4.com. They can find out where we're going to be, if we're going to be in Michigan soon again, or we're every weekend we're somewhere different. So if you want to come see us and see how bad my bass playing is, come do it in person.
Well, I've seen you on YouTube, and your bass playing is not anything close to bad. It's awesome. What you can do backwards, and I gotta hand it to you. Your story is awesome, like I said at the beginning, and I'll reiterate that.
Well, thanks, Joe. Look, you know what? Challenge yourself. If you could find a left-handed guitar laying around somewhere, pick it up and see if you could play something on it. I bet after a few weeks you probably could.
Yeah, well, if I
Yeah.
find time and I have the inclination to do that. Do you know John
Yeah.
Patitucci?
John who?
John Patitucci played with Chick Corea, and he's got a solo. He's with Wayne. Was with Wayne
Oh
Shore.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've known him for like 35 years. I just found out a year or two ago he is left-handed. I had no
Oh.
idea. He plays the upright and he plays the electric and six string and all that stuff. And I mentioned Jimmy Haslip earlier, and he plays upside down from the Yellow Jackets. And I'm trying to think. I've interviewed a bunch of other left hand. We have an interview with Paul McCartney on the site on For Bass Players Only. So
Wow.
I got to hand it to you. My dad was left-handed. One of my sons is left-handed. I think it's probably a little harder just to be a lefty in society and where you sit. No, I don't want to sit next to him at the table. He's left-handed. He's going to keep my.
Yeah, they used to smack hands right when people started writing left-handed years ago. That society back then it was looked down upon apparently.
My father told me once he got into trouble in college because he was taking a test and he turned his paper completely sideways, and the professor took his paper and he says, "We don't do that here." And my dad said, "Can I show you something?" He says, "The reason I do it is because otherwise I'd be covering up what I'm writing." And the professor apologized and gave him his paper back and felt bad about it.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
a lot of things we don't think about, like left-handed desks in school. And I'm getting way off track here, so let's get back to Ardy Sarraf, the Fab Four. Awesome. Thefab4.com is the website. So check it out. And if you get a chance to see them, do it. And if I get a chance to see them, I'm going to do it. So thank
I
you
hope so.
very much. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm Jon Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to learn to play bass, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. This is the place to learn bass. Thank you again, Ardy Sarraf. I will see you all next week, same time, same place, right here for BassPlayersOnly.com. In the meantime, let's play bass.